So let's just touch on on climate change before we go into the better half of the program. We're all screwed. I think that's all we need to do.
Is that
right, now
new
let's go to the
information?
better half
Is
of
that
the show where
new?
we
Is
will
that new
talk
information?
about-
Well, I mean, I don't know how new it is, but there was a report that came out in Corinne Leclerc. Oh no, that is the researcher at the University of East Anglia in UK, and they have come out with a report in Nature, published on Sunday in Nature Climate Change, and it says that all the modeling, the scientists do different modeling. What happens at this point? What happens? Models predict how much the world will warm depending on how much we emit in the future. There are four, usually scientists look at four possible futures, ranging from an uber green society to a worst case scenario in which no action is taken to combat global warming. Research shows how today's emissions are near perfectly in line with the worst case scenario that has been projected.
Yeah, is that good? Is that good?
According to the scientists' best estimates, the world will be as much as 5.4 Celsius warmer in 2100 than it was before the Industrial Revolution. Part of the Syrian civil war was a function of a drought that many people think is a function of global climate change. We're going to see a lot more of this going forward. President Obama and the Prime Minister from China, or the chairman, I should say, China, both sort of talked a fairly decent game yesterday at the UN. We can't obviously have any type of treaty because the Senate would never ratify it at this point. You need 2/3 of the Senate. Mitch McConnell has said that if he takes over, if the Republicans take over the Senate, they're going to start to chip away at the sort of small bore stuff that the EPA has done. But I don't know.
I try and think in terms of
Canadian passport. That seems to me to be the best thing that we could do at this point.
But be aware that Canada has a lot of resources that a lot of people want, and Stephen Harper is a right winger. So you never know what will be.
They'll be extracting
Canada.
resources, and that'll probably be the trade. And but
also, I have to say, in Vancouver, I love Vancouver, but the Whole Foods on Robson, the line is a little loosey goosey. It's not. They don't run a tight ship like the Whole Foods here.
all right, well,
That's all. I mean, no offense, but
Whole Foods here is pretty.
the Whole Foods, they really do. They really have a system, and it works. And I love Vancouver, but that Whole Foods on Robson, you know the one I'm talking about. It's a little porous.
all right,
It's
folks,
porous.
you might want
It's
to put
porous.
a pin in that idea to move to
porous.
Canada to escape climate change.
But actually, no. But the thing is, seriously, there were predictions in the late '60s and the early '70s, as you may recall, about this population explosion. And movies like Soylent Green came out, and by this point, we were supposed to be literally living like sardines, and with no food. That was supposed to. The futurists at that time had predicted by like 1990, 1999 that it would be unsustainable, and that did not happen.
Indeed.
And I always try and latch on to those kind of things that somehow, some way, because if you think of the Industrial Revolution, if you think what the atmosphere, just go to in London, or even in the Dickensian era, where literally people would walk around covered in soot from how dirty the air was. Or if you think of the changes that came after Upton Sinclair, in the meat industry, all these kind of things. Now, one would have thought at that time, we're done. This is as bad as it can be. And yet, things get better somehow. I try and think in terms of that.
I don't know. You were such an optimist.
It's not an optimist, but I think like the history has shown us that sometimes people do the right thing, or sometimes things can correct with just of their own accord and with help from activists and progressive and what have you. I just think when I was a little kid, I do remember fearing
one-child
what
policies.
life would be like in the future. And even Logan's Run, I believe that was supposed to be the year like 2000 when old people went to you had to find sanctuary. My chip and your chip would have been blinking. like Logan, when we turned 30. Remember in Logan's run? Farrah Fawcett was in it.
I do remember
Michael
that.
York, a young Michael York. Fantastic.
All right, well, listen, we're going to
But
take a
things
break.
don't always turn out like one would think, is what I'm saying.
On that optimistic note, we're going to take a break.